Welcome everyone to our second AI in Action at WCU webinar. My name is Dr. Tom Pantasis, and I am an instructional designer with the Teaching and Learning Center. I want to thank you for being here with us today, either in person watching or watching this recording after the live event. We appreciate that you are taking some of your precious time to learn more about AI, particularly as it impacts our educational contexts. I also want to take this instant to thank today's presenter, Dr. Esther Smidt, for sharing some of her wisdom and experience with us today. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items to go over with everyone. And let me get my slides. Here we go. As I mentioned, this is part of a larger series this semester. This is our upcoming schedule. If you're interested in attending any of these future sessions, we'll have a link to the registration page in the chat. You do have to register for each session individually, and times and dates do vary, but you'll see that we have one session per week during this semester. Alternatively, you can pause the video recording at this point, scan this QR code, which will take you to the registration page. In addition to this webinar series, the TLC also has AI resources available on our website. These resources include sample syllabus statements, tips to consider when talking to students about AI strategies, and links to relevant TLC AI blog posts, which you see some of those links here on the screen. The blog holds a collection of different types of resources, including past webinar recordings, posts from your fellow Westchester University faculty members, particularly about how they're addressing AI in their specific contexts. There are podcast episodes and a whole lot more. We're constantly adding material to the blog, so we encourage you to check it out on a regular basis. We put the links to both the website and the blog in the chat, but again, if you'd like to scan these QR codes to get those links, you can do that as well. And finally, I just want to call everyone's attention to the new AI guiding framework that the university just released. We have 6 key recommendations, and I encourage you to check that out and send any questions you might have to that email address that's listed there. So here's our agenda for today. If you have any questions while the presentation is going on, please put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that as we go. However, we won't answer questions until we reach our last 10 minutes. At that point, we'll also open it up for some discussion. I will be keeping an eye on the time and will be holding us to these time limits. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen so that our presenter can get set. While they are getting ready, I want to introduce to you Dr. Esther Smidt, who is presenting on using Google LM Notebook to help prepare a course. Esther is a professor of languages here at Westchester University, and at this point, I will turn it over to her.
Okay, so I obviously am going to be talking about Google Notebook LM, and let me start. I'm assuming you can, oh, it's, never mind.
I can see your screen. You're good.
Okay, so so let's move on. And this is the Google Notebook LM link. So let me start by actually going to the, things are slow. Okay, here we go. So this is my dashboard just because I've used it before. But one of the things to note, so this is what I used to create the course that I was asked to teach, well, maybe like a week or 2 weeks before the semester began. And so these are all the sources. And if you, let me just, okay, here, let me start up a new one. So create new. And so you can add sources here and just upload them, and they will move into, they will be populated here. And then you can start typing whatever you want to type here. And then, so let's say, create a 10-word overview of, and let's imagine I only want to do this one, and then of the chapter. And then if you click play, that's what they will do. So one of the things to remember though is that if you don't save to notes, and when you X out, it's all gone. Whatever it is that was created is all gone. But if you click save to notes, it will go here. And so that's something to remember. Make sure that you click only the sources you want and type whatever you want. The information will be here. And if you fail to save to note and you X out, it's all gone. Another thing, though, to remember is that the notes do build though. So if I continue to do more, ask more prompts, it will all build up until I X out. The conversation will build, and Notebook LM will learn from the resources that you put in, from the questions you ask, from the notes that they create. It's cumulative until you X out if you don't save. So one of the things I did learn was that it's really good because the prompt I asked was create an overview of particular sources, and I checked source by source. I didn't combine all the sources together because I wanted Notebook LM to to work on specific sources. But so I was able to do an entire semester's work in 4 hours, which is wonderful, especially when I was given very little time to create the course. But what I did learn is that you want to use the results as a first draft to be refined in subsequent semesters. And let me show you what it looked like. So for example, here, week 1, so here's the overview that was provided when I just put in the prologue and then separately put in the linguistic facts of life. So the first week, there were 2 documents, 2 sources. So first the prologue, then the linguistic facts of life. And here's the overview that was provided. Then when I individually did, again for the objectives, first the prologue, then separately the linguistic facts of life, they actually provided 3 objectives, objectives 1, 2, and 3. And then there was a lot of understand. So you want to change the verbs, modify it to something that is observable and measurable. I did add number 4, which was not given by Notebook LM. I added that after I finished week 1, when I reread the sources. So that's one thing. So that's where I started. But then I began to realize that so here are other options. And so let's move back to here. So you can actually play with it, look at study guide, look at briefing doc, look at FAQ, look at timeline. And this part is fun, the audio overview, because it's done in the form of a podcast. So I did do this when I selected all the sources for my course, and then I clicked on, this load the conversation where they created an audio overview, a podcast. I haven't really listened to it, but I thought it was fun. It's something that is, could be helpful. But then after that, I started looking at other things. It's like, okay, so beyond, getting an overview, getting learning objectives, what can I do with this? And one of the things was, for me, in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, one of the low-hanging fruit I thought was to ask Notebook LM to create paragraphs that a low-level English language learner can understand, because my teacher candidates, they might have difficulties with creating low-level um, paragraphs, but this is something that they can use with Notebook LM. So what I did then here is going back to You Say Potatoes. It was this one. It was The Hot and Cold Summer. It's a reading passage for fifth grade language arts. So I fed it in. Then, as you can see here, I asked them to please summarize this chapter in a 100-word paragraph that a kindergartner can understand. What's interesting is that every time you do it, it actually gives you something a little bit different. And it can be inaccurate because I was like, there's no hummingbird in the text. So I went back. The hummingbird came in a vocabulary exercise before the text began. So you kind of have to be very careful what you feed it. So if you want just the reading passage, don't give the vocabulary exercises that precede the reading text. And then here are some more. This I fed it the one of the texts from You Say Potato, which is the length 150. But it's interesting to note that. So I did first grader, sixth grader, 12th grader on the one hand. Then I did beginner English learner, intermediate English learner, and advanced English learner on the other. And then I just chose a snippet from the chapter. And you can see that it does work. For example, first grader, it says talking changes all the time. Then sixth grader, they change it to language is always changing. Then 12th grader, they say language change is inevitable. And then if you're looking at a beginner, intermediate, and advanced, again, you can see that there is an increase in linguistic complexity through proficiency level. At the beginner, it's all languages change over time, intermediate language change, and then advanced is the inevitability of language change. And so that's really what I want to share for my exploration with Notebook LM, Google Notebook LM. And I am going to stop sharing.
Well, I would hope if you keep it up for a second, if you would
Okay.
go over to the Google LM side of
Oh,
things. When you were
okay.
talking about the note building, right, where you put in a prompt and it generated a response, but in order to share it, you had to hit that note option.
Right.
If you then continued the conversation after you had created the note, is the note being updated with that conversation as you go, or do you have to save
Yes.
it again?
So until you X out of Notebook LM, everything will continue. So they
Okay.
will Notebook LM will learn from the prompts that you ask it, and it will learn from its own generation. So until you X out of it entirely, it will continue to learn from both your prompts and its generation.
Okay. Um, the other question I had is you briefly touched on the podcast piece, and we'll have a speaker coming later this semester to share more, who's done a lot more exploration there. Have you given any thought though to using like to creating podcasts for each week of your course to add as another resource for students?
I think that's a possibility for later right now because it's a new course for me and I'm like 2 seconds ahead of my students. So I'm prioritizing different things. It's something that I could potentially look at in future semesters. One of my worries is that use I want what I do, I want to drive students to the original sources. I don't want to give them shortcuts
Okay.
that would prevent them or demotivate them from reading the original source. And that's one of the things that I'm battling with Notebook LM or generative AI in general.
In general.
Yeah.
So you created objectives, you created overviews for your pages. Were there any other aspects of the course prep that you used AI to help you with as you went through that process? Because I mean, those are great examples of things that AI can really accelerate for you as a course preparer, especially given your time constraints, where you can take something, take a look at it, make those tweaks, throw it in the course much quicker, I think, than if you were writing them from scratch.
So what I did do with but not Notebook LM in particular, but generative AI broadly speaking was so this week. So let me share my screen again. And okay, here we go. This So we're back here this week for week 3. One of the things I did do, because not phonology, phonetics. Okay, one of the things I did do is because these are freshmen, it's because this is a generative, and this is a gen ed speaking emphasis, purely asynchronous course. So I was having to do things differently. And because it's phonetics, and so I wanted to do a game. And what I did was, if you look at the PowerPoint, so using generative AI generically by using Google rather than Notebook LM, what I did was here. So I said I asked my students to ask a question and then make the question using IPA, which is International Phonetic Alphabet. So the one in blue was me doing it myself. The one in black, I actually went to Google and I asked Google, how do you say what was the most interesting thing you've learned in IPA? And then this is what Google came up with. And so I actually said, do it first on your own, then plug it into Google and see how your version and Google's version is different and analyze it to see, okay, why is it different? And so that's what I'm using this week for phonetics. So
Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So Mark had a question that he threw in the chat. Um, Based on your experience, are there other subjects here at Westchester that would benefit more um, and others less from deploying Google LM Notebook? Like, where do you see it having value with certain disciplines or certain subjects, and where do you think it might not be as helpful?
So I don't know about other subjects. I mean, it's like I know what's my own area of expertise. So I started this because I was asked to teach this course like with very little notice. But as I was playing with it, I began to think about other courses, like the course that I always teach, which is teaching English language learners pre-K 12. I feel like this is something that I'm going to want to teach my teacher candidates because they don't know how to simplify or make linguistically less complex low texts for lower proficiency English language learners. So that's something that Notebook LM can do. And that's something that I think other generative AI software can do as well. But I think it's going to be a learning moment for them because like I shared, it's like every time you feed it in, the source is the same, the text is a little bit different. And the first time I did that, and when I tried it again now, it didn't work. I didn't save it the first time I did it. So the text, the fifth grade language arts text, so the protagonist, the fifth grade girl, has a parrot named Lucette. So she kept asking the other two characters who were fifth grade boys, do you want to see Lucette? Do you want to see Lucette? Do you want to see Lucette? They thought Lucette was her baby sister. And so they had no interest in seeing her baby sister. Later, they found out that Lucette was a parrot. But what Notebook LM fed out was um, Bolivia is a girl's name. Bolivia has a baby sister, which is a parrot.
Mm.
So I wish I had saved it, but I didn't. And it's not doing it now. So I think it's for me, I am going to use that with my students, but I'm going to use it as a teachable moment that you can use it to reduce time for like busy work things, but you have to make sure you know what you're doing. So that's the thing.
And I think that speaks a lot too to that it's still the value of expertise with a lot of this. And I've used this example a couple of different times with folks. It's like I can ask it for a summary about something that I don't really know. Um, I work with Adam Raniere in communications, and we use an example where he gave me one of the theorists from communications that's well known in his discipline, but not really outside of it. And so I just put it in, got the summary. It looks good to me. I don't know the theorist, and then I put it in front of Adam, and he's able to pick out the like two little things that are just not quite right, because he has that expertise. And I think
Right.
this is another perfect example of that in this context. Going forward, both with this course and other courses, are there any other ways that you think you're thinking about trying to use this particular Google LM tool to help you out in your work as a faculty member?
I haven't really thought that far ahead yet, just because I'm still like treading water with this course and I'm I think if you were to ask me at the end of the semester, when I'm like, really delving into my content in real time and thinking about what Notebook LM can do for me. So that's where that whole the hot and cold summer came in, because I was delving with that in real time, and I'm like, oh, this is a good thing, and that's where the phonetics thing came in, where it's like, how am I going to have my Gen Ed speaking emphasis students do something about phonetics? So I don't. I can't think of anything beyond what I've already shared right now, just because this is where I am.
Okay. Um, about how much time do you think it saved you, the things that you've used it on so far?
I don't think it's for me, the only thing that really saved me time was doing that overview and the learning objective. That saved me time. Like I did the entire semester in 4 hours. So that saved a huge amount of time. And that's the busy work part that I think it can do. The other things, like this one, where I was using it, but not Notebook LM, but just I feel like it allowed me to diversify the way I teach more than it. So I was using it not as time saving, but more as, oh, I would never have been able to do this if there was no Gen AI. I would have just stopped with write your own and have your classmates read what you've written and then answer the question. So this, I think, allowed students to grapple with the content in a deeper way, where they can see, okay, this is where I went wrong, or no, actually, Google was wrong. I am right. Or in this case, I'd be like, oh, I did it a British way, but Google gave me the American way. Actually, it was the other way around. I did it the American way. Google gave me British. But yeah.
I like those examples too, in the sense of it's both content focused within your discipline, right? They're learning that particular style of doing the things with phonetics, but there's also an aspect of showing that the AI tool itself isn't always right, and like that again to that expertise point. But you're able to put both those things together in that, and also in a way, as I think you just said, that's letting students go further, a little deeper than you might have done had you done a different setup or a different structure. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Um, we do have other folks on the line. Does anybody else have any other questions they want to ask here before we wrap up?
No, it's very good. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
You're
Well,
welcome.
Esther, we do want to say thank you for your time and expertise today, and we appreciate that you've taken some time out of your busy schedule to share a little bit about how you've been exploring this tool and how you found some ways to kind of make your work a little bit easier and expand the opportunities for students. So thank you again for sharing. And that concludes our session today. And just a reminder that we have a new opportunity every week, and you do have to sign up for those each week. And I'm gonna stop the recording at this point and say thanks for watching.